Chicken parm, the pinnacle of Italian-American cuisine. It has a million different variations, but today I'm going to show you hands down the best possible way to prepare it. The secret lies in the breading, as well as a couple different serving options. Let's start with the chicken. We'll be using chicken breast here. This is one of the few dishes where I prefer to use breasts over thighs. You could use chicken thighs, but for my taste, they're a little too fatty for this dish. So, for once, I am going to stick with tradition. I've got about 1.5 pounds, a little over half a kilo of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. We're going to be slicing the chicken into thin cutlets, so a freshly sharpened knife really helps here. I'll lay the breast out flat on my cutting board, and using my offhand to stabilize, I'll slowly glide the knife across the chicken, cutting off about a 1/4 inch off the top. It takes a little practice to get this down, but once you've done it a few times, it becomes second nature. Here's a better shot of what I'm doing. Alternatively, your grocery store might have pre-sliced cutlets available, or you could always have the butcher cut it for you. However you source your cutlets, once prepared, we can move on to the breading stage. I've got a standard 3-part breading stage set up here. First is some all-purpose flour that I've augmented with some garlic powder. That's maybe 2 teaspoons or 6 grams. Additionally, about a teaspoon, 1 gram of dried thyme, 1 teaspoon, 3 grams of onion powder, 2 teaspoons, 12 grams of kosher salt, and I don't know, we'll call that 27 cranks of black pepper. Give that a stir, and now it's time for the eggs. It's just 2 beaten eggs. That's it. Okay? Moving on. Lastly, we have a plate of Panko breadcrumbs. These are breadcrumbs made from electrified bread. It's true, look it up. Now you could use regular Italian breadcrumbs, but Panko are just so much lighter and crispier. They're just a far superior product for this and really every other culinary application, in my opinion. I've got maybe a 1.5 cups, 120 grams of panko here. Now I'm going to add a roughly equivalent amount of grated Pecorino cheese right into the breading, so now we'll have a layer of fried cheese on our chicken. I guess you could also use Parmesan here. I mean, it is called chicken parm, after all, but I much prefer the saltier, sharper taste of Pecorino. Once the cheese is added, give that a mix, and now we're ready to bread. First, dredge the cutlets in flour, making sure to get a nice even coverage on both sides before shaking off any excess flour. Next, I'll lay it in the egg wash, let it soak in for a few seconds, and then flip it over and allow the other side to absorb some egg before shaking off any excess. Then we'll finish in the panko. You really want to make sure that you're pressing the breadcrumb mixture firmly into the cutlet here, flipping it over several times and repeating this step to ensure you get every inch of the cutlet fully covered in panko. I'll lay the breaded cutlet onto a mini baking sheet, then repeat this process with the rest of the chicken. Once all of the cutlets have been breaded, we'll throw these in the fridge for at least half an hour. Giving the chicken some time in the fridge will allow the flour to fully hydrate and help to prevent the coating from falling off during the frying. While the chicken rests, we can begin working on our tomato sauce. And it starts with some onion and garlic. I'm using 1 shallot here in place of a white onion. I'll peel and dice into a pretty fine mince. I prefer to have a smoother texture to my sauce for this recipe, so for that reason, I'm avoiding giving this shallot too rough a dice. I'll also peel and chop a few garlic cloves. With the aromatics prepped, I'll throw a pot over medium heat, add some olive oil, and begin to sweat the shallot and garlic. After a few minutes, the veggies have softened and are just beginning to brown, so now I'll deglaze with my tomatoes. Go with whatever canned tomato product you prefer. I'm using this Pastine brand tomato puree. Give that a stir, and now to brighten things up and add a little sweetness, we're going to add a glug of whatever cheap white wine you have on hand. I'll also add a pinch of kosher salt and some dried basil and oregano, and I'm also going to add a generous squeeze of lemon juice, which is a very underrated pairing with tomato. Now just let the sauce simmer and reduce, and in the meantime, it's time to fry. For frying this chicken, I recommend using either a nonstick pan or a well-seasoned cast iron. If you tried using stainless steel here, the chicken is liable to stick and lose its breading. I'm using this wide nonstick frying pan. I'll throw that over medium heat and add about a third of a cup of olive oil and allow that to heat up. Once hot, we'll drop in 3 of our cutlets and fry for anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes on both sides. Since the pan I'm using is much wider than my burner, I'll be having to rotate these pieces halfway through before flipping to help ensure they get even browning. 4 minutes later, and the undersides are nice and golden brown, so give these a flip and cook for another 3 to 4 minutes. While the chicken is finishing, I'll also start boiling some water for our spaghetti. Once the water is boiling, the pasta goes in, and now we'll check back in on our chicken. Now that both sides are golden brown, we'll remove from the pan and move to a wire rack to cool and allow any excess oil to drip off. Next batch of chicken goes in, same deal as before, fry both sides until golden brown, and then remove to cool. Just before the pasta is done, I'll taste the tomato sauce for one last seasoning. Needs just a little more salt. Other than that, it's ready. So I'll kill the heat and then drain the spaghetti and finally toss in our sauce. I'll plate up some spaghetti and top it with one of our beautiful fried cutlets. And because there's not enough cheese already, we'll finish with a generous grating of fresh pecorino. Now, what could be better than that? Well, I'll tell you. Let's make it into a sandwich. I've got some nice French bread here from my local bakery. I'll split it open, throw in a few pieces of provolone, and toss in the oven at 400F 232C for a few minutes to toast and melt the cheese. Once that's done, I'll remove from the oven, layer in a few of our cutlets, and cover with a copious amount of our tomato sauce. Now, I promise you, this will be the best chicken parm you've ever had. And if you don't believe me, you'll have to try it for yourself. And if you try it and still don't agree, then just let me know in the comments where I screwed up. Also, let me know down in the comments what my next recipe should be. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.